Hello, ladies and gentlemen. However you're joining us and wherever you're joining us, thank you for joining us. Here's our agenda for the night, or for whatever time you're watching the video here. I'm going to put this down and switch the camera the other way. There I am. I hope you're all doing well, and my intent here is to try and convey as much as possible what's going on, where we're headed, and how we're going to do things. First of all, I hope you're well. I hope your family's well. I hope no one that you know has been affected by this horrendous virus, and if they have been, then please take care of them and make that your number one priority. Number two, thank you for your flexibility. I have tried a number of different platforms for doing this over the course of the last 72 hours, and unfortunately, what I've discovered is that I am old and not very good at technology. So over the course of my teaching career, I have made a series of videos for YouTube for my advanced placement students. So that's a format I'm familiar with, and in a sense, like a good fossil, I am falling back into form and attempting to make a nice long YouTube video here that covers everything that we need to talk about. I am certain that I am going to miss things, that I am going to leave things out, and that you're going to have questions, and I hope that you will email me those questions. My email through BC is there. If that one for some reason isn't working, my Kern High School District email is also on that sheet that I started off at the beginning of the video with, and I will end the video with that sheet again in case you need it. And please get in contact with me any way that you need to in order to make this function for you. On to the business. If you haven't printed out the revised syllabus, I would suggest that you do. If you haven't printed out the slides for this evening, which really are the first 7 or 8, I would suggest that it's nice to see them at the very least as you go through them. Even if you're not necessarily printing them, have them on a device nearby. I have my laptop right here, so if I'm referencing it as I go, please forgive me for doing so, trying to make this as effective as possible. I also have my copy of Voices of Freedom. There she is. All right, so a few things. I don't know if this is the format we'll use every time. I'd kind of like to know what you think. I'll give you a forum for saying that here when we get to the end of the video, but I am interested in hearing whether or not this is something that works for you. My hunch is that this might be a nice way to go. It allows you to watch this whenever you get the chance. It's portable. Not that you want to hear my melodious voice ringing in your ears during random parts of the day, but here it is. You know, here's an opportunity for that. I had said that we were going to use Confer Zoom. I think the people at Confer Zoom have become the most popular human beings on the planet with the outbreak of this virus. They are simply trying to manage every single community college teacher, high school teacher, university teacher in the universe all at once. And Craig Holliday is apparently not high on that list, and that is perfectly fine. So I'm going with the YouTube route of things and hoping that that works. Looking over the sheet that I put out as the syllabus, some things that I want to point out are changing here. I can't give exams in the way that I have thus far. If I send out a multiple choice exam, I'm basically saying, hey, fill in the right answers and send it back. And so I'm not going to do that. I think we all know that human nature is human nature, and there it is. Also, our second research paper, I'm going to replace that by using other means of assessment through here. Here's what I'm proposing. Your grades right now stay your grades. So if you looked on Canvas, and you should look on Canvas, you're looking at 2 test grades and a paper grade. Now, all combined, that's 200 points for 2 exams. That's 400 total plus a paper grade of about 150. Total possible 550. There are some people who are at 550. There are some people who are at 150 or 200. How many points are left in the class? Well, I have, from this point out, 7 weekly assignments, each worth 80 points. That's 560 points. So, in order to get an A in this class, there's 1,000 points on the table. You need to be able to get 900 of them. And for those of you who are at 550, you can do the math. That means you need 350 points. If you get to 900 total points in the class at some point in our process and you decide, I'm not doing the last 2 of these assignments, I understand. Remember, I did say you could basically drop one of your exams. That's my way of saying you've done well enough along the way here, you can drop one of the exams. On the other hand, if you're someone who's sitting on 150 points or 200 points, you're going to need all of these, and you're going to need to do pretty well, but the opportunity is still there to do well in the course. Let me put forward that the drop with a W grade day is March 27th. But before you think about, dropping the class and should I do that or should I not do that, please keep in mind there's a lot of points left in the overall assignment world here. So I hope you'll continue to follow along here. Okay? And if there's some way I can help you with the process, or if you don't feel like this method of assessment is the best for you, I'm open to other ideas. Contact me, let me know, and we'll figure it out. All right, so what do these assignments look like? I only included the first one here, okay? And I'm gonna flip the phone again just to do this. Let's go like that, look at that. There it is, there's the first assignment right there, ladies and gentlemen. And as I said, that is on Canvas. You can go and see that on the new syllabus document there. And it basically is going to ask you to write answers to questions that concern the material I'm going to cover here in a little bit. One of the questions asks you to talk about the readings, so we continue our fidelity or our loyalty to the voices of freedom, making sure that we're still using the documents here for historical work. And here's what I'd like you to do. There's 3 questions here. I'd like a 4th question. I will offer you extra credit if you answer this 4th question. This is also my way of seeing if you're watching the video, to be frank. Number 4, because there's 3 here. Number 4, is this format working for you? Is this YouTube video, covering the material, presenting it in this fashion, having you watch it, turning in a paper by Monday night to Canvas? That's when it's due, by the way. Next week, Monday, 6 p.m., March the 23rd. Is this working for you? So that's the 4th question, the bonus one that's not listed here. If you're watching this video, you'll remember to answer the 4th question. If you don't answer the 4th question, if nobody answers the 4th question, it'll be like, apparently this format is not exactly reaching the masses. Hopefully it is reaching the masses. So go out and have a look at it. All right. Now, in the original syllabus, I had lists of things you had to know. I'm sticking with that pretty much. But by the same token, in order to make things a little more fluid, I've gone through the course, I've pulled some of the less necessary things out, if you like, to make sure that we can get the material in and still finish on time, and also at the same time make sure that I can give you a great understanding of U.S. history here. So I would, at this point, take your old syllabus, I would put it aside, I would break out the new one, the one that is entitled Revisions at the top, and I would use that as my main guide of things. If any of this is unclear, please email me and I'm happy to explain it as closely as I can. I try to make these things make sense, but sometimes it doesn't work as well as I can, okay? So on my agenda of things, welcome, explanation of new format, the first assignment of this new format due March the 23rd. That's next week, Monday, 6 p.m. You're submitting it directly into Canvas. I will grade it. I will get it back to you. Remember the 4th question, extra credit, 4th question, is this format working for you? If it's not working for you, then you should say so, okay? Cover material from today's lesson. I'm going to put this stuff aside. Here we go. Pull this out. Now, please keep in mind, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Occasionally, I'm going to look over here and look at the slide and make sure I am covering everything that I would want to say. And this is going to go quicker than it normally would in a classroom setting because, frankly, I'm not waiting for people to write. So if you need to pause me in order to pause me, then pause me. And then there'll probably be really awkward moments where I'm stuck like this. Or this. Or in some weird thing. Now, I know that you are nothing like my high school students who would take those moments in order to snapshot things and put embarrassing looking hats, smiley faces, mustaches, and weird outfits on me and then put them on the internet. I know that you're too busy for that business. I hope. Okay. So we start off here with the first slide, ladies and gentlemen, about the 1796 election. Okay. The 1796 election is the first real American presidential election in history. Why do we say that? Because up until now, it's been George Washington. And George Washington steps aside in 1796, knowing that he doesn't want to pass away in office and that he might. And so in doing so, Washington is saying, over to you, next generation, guys. Now, John Adams has been the vice president in the cabinet up till this point. Thomas Jefferson had been Secretary of State. He eventually leaves the Washington cabinet in anger over George Washington's backing of the National Bank Plan. So there's some salt here, some definite angst between the two gentlemen. Okay? These are two former very close friends who basically will now become political rivals. Adams is going to represent that federalist mindset, stronger centralized government, national government taking the fore. Okay? On the other hand, Jefferson and his anti-federalist or Democratic Republican Party is going to represent the states. Jefferson believes that the states should do the majority of the governing. He thinks that he is right in thinking that the best thing for America is a very strong set of principles that come from the states and not the federal government, right? Jefferson doesn't think we shouldn't have government. He just thinks that the states are better at it than the national government, okay? Looking at the election, I'm going to cheat here, and if you have this in color, you should look at it too. Notice the division. Notice how the orange states of the Northeast side with John Adams and the Federalist Party, and then notice how the greenish states of the South and the West side with the Democratic Republican Party. Here's a general trend. As this nation expands, as it goes west is what it looks like on my map, it will be more Jefferson. Adams' idea, the Federalist idea, is really popular among the merchant northeastern class of America, kind of the older America. As we go west, though, that message is going to get less and less popular over time. And so as we add new states, right, notice there's new ones here, Kentucky, Tennessee, those states are Jefferson states. And Adams is fully aware of that. As the nation goes west and adds new states, they're going to buy into that Jeffersonian anti-federalist ideal. That farmer mentality is going to be more popular. And so Adams and his Federalists are up against it here. They don't realize it. And Adams does win this election. Notice it's a close one, though. And Adams doesn't realize it, but the Democratic Republican Party is on the rise, and they are going to be hammering it, right? Jefferson's party loses this election narrowly, but will come back to win the election in 1800, 1804, 1808, 1812, 1816, 1820, 24, 28, 32, and 36. That's how they're going to roll, okay? So that party is transcendent, in a sense, in American politics. What's the slide about? Well, they hadn't anticipated parties when they put together the constitutional structure. That seems bizarre, but the Constitution makes no mention of parties. And so, in essence, the Constitution says the person who gets the most votes gets the presidency. And the first two times, that was George Washington. And the person who gets the second amount of votes, last time that was John Adams, that person gets the vice presidency. Now, that, unfortunately, is going to lead us to a little bit of a oops here, in the sense that when they ran against each other, you're going to end up with a president from one party, John Adams, and a vice president from a lesser party, the Democratic Republican Party. Not lesser in that sense, but the lesser votes. And so you end up with a mixed White House, right? Something that today you'd be like, whoa, what if you had the Trump Hillary Clinton White House, or flip it, have it the Hillary Clinton Trump White House? They would spend most of the day throwing shade at one another on Twitter, I think. But it would be a mess. So what you have here then is a mixed government between the two forces, between the Federalist and the Democratic Republican forces of the government. Okay? Next slide, if you will. Okay. The XYZ Affair. This is a weird debacle, and we study this only really for the last couple of lines on this slide. So as I look at the slide, let me try and tell this story. Adams, the president, really doesn't like the French. He has a genuine distaste for them. Most of the time when he was a diplomat, he was posted in places like the Netherlands, and in Britain, he was not posted in France. And he just doesn't have a real strong feeling for them. Jefferson, on the other hand, is a big fan of the French. He likes the French Revolution's tilt towards the democracy in the hands of the people. He thinks that that's the direction democracy needs to be going. He had a hand in helping write the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen in the French Revolution. He's a fan, okay? In the first years of his administration, Adams decides, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and make a treaty with the French where America and France become, if not allies, at least friends, where the French are not attacking American vessels. Both Britain and France are actively attacking American ships on the high seas. In our last unit, Washington attempted to make that stop with Britain with Jay's Treaty. And now Adams is going to do his best to make it stop with the French with a treaty that he's attempting to put together here. So Adams, as much as he doesn't like the French, sends a group of fellows over to France in order to negotiate this treaty. And over they go. And they arrive. And then the French go a little bit on them. A group of 3 French individuals, who Adams later names X, Y, and Z, hence the name of this affair, the XYZ Affair, a group of 3 French individuals approach the American diplomats and demand a tribute, or a bribe, $25,000 in order to discuss terms of a treaty. Can you do that? No, you can't do that. You don't do that to legitimate nations. You don't do it to Britain, for instance. And so when it's done to America, Adams thinks, I'm mad at these people. So the diplomats from America write home to Adams. And they're like, what do you want us to do? And Adams is like, I got a plan. So he brings the guys home and he exposes the story to the American media. His plan is this. He thinks that if he exposes it to the American media, he's going to be able to make some hay out of this. Here's what he's going to say. I tried to make a treaty with the French, and the French tried to bribe me. You know who likes France? Thomas Jefferson. My vice president, the Democratic Republican, likes the French. Now, Jefferson has nothing to do with this. The party, the Democratic Republicans, have nothing to do with this. Doesn't matter. Adams is going to use it as an opportunity to make Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans look bad. Now, when you make a mistake in life, sometimes you have to go, that was a mistake. Adams gets slaughtered by the national press. And what he should have done at this point was go, that was a mistake. I apologize for that. I shouldn't have done it. That's not what he did, though. So here's what he does. In order to stop people complaining about what he did, Adams and the heavily Federalist Congress pass a set of laws, the Alien and Sedition Act, that make it illegal to criticize the president. Ouch. Really? Yes. The laws made it difficult for people to criticize the president, in essence, sending them to jail if they had criticized the president. 2 states, Virginia and Kentucky, nullify that law. Now, this is the whole key of this entire slide. This is the most important thing I will say probably in the entire lesson here, so make sure you catch what we're doing here. Nullification is the act of a state government saying to a federal power, no, we are not enforcing that ban. Okay? So in the time of coronavirus, I just watched a briefing where the president said, no social gatherings over 10 people. What if a state that at this point hasn't had a lot of coronavirus, right? West Virginia was the last of the states to have a positive corona test. What if they said, no, we're not following what you say, Mr. President. We down here in the state of West Virginia will do what we want. We are nullifying, canceling, overturning, vetoing, whatever word you want to use to symbolize it. We are going to nullify your law. So nullification is the act of a government canceling out another level of government's act. Okay, now, can a state nullify a federal law? No, not really, they can't. That's not the way it's supposed to work. On the other hand, though, states are not supposed to have to deal with laws where the federal government removes the liberties allowed by the First Amendment. So you could say that the Alien and Sedition Act was wrong, and then you could pile on top of it and say, wait a moment, the states were wrong to nullify the law. So in that sense, you've got 2 wrongs not necessarily making a right. The whole debacle makes Adams and the Federalist Party look sketchy. And if I'm Thomas Jefferson, this is exactly what I said was going to happen. You wait, right? Jefferson had warned that the elites in America were going to take power, concentrate it, and deprive people of their liberties. And how long have we been at this? 10 years. 10 years. And already, the people of America are being subject to laws that seem to remove their individual liberties. And Jefferson's going to say, this is ridiculous. And he's right. So unfortunately, if you're Jefferson, you didn't necessarily get to win that first presidential election, but you're going to win the next one because Adams looks horrible as a result of this. As I switch over my slide here, you get the 1800 election. Okay, not necessarily a slam dunk for Jefferson. Okay, Adams is still going to hold some of the support. I'm looking at the colors here, But if you look at it, generally speaking, Jefferson is doing well in the South and the West. Adams is supposed to do well in the Northeast. He's lost some of that support here, as you can tell there. But this is a clear refusal of a second term for Adams, and away goes Adams. Now, that friendship, it's worthy of mentioning. These guys are lifelong buds. And they eventually rekindle this flame after another decade or so. They're going to start talking to one another because it's a great friendship that needs to be brought back together. And if you don't know it, one of the great holy moly moments of American history is that both Adams and Jefferson die on the same day, July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. How the heck does that happen? That is proof of some kind of whoa, but they both die on the same day. All right, on to the presidency of Thomas Jefferson of Virginia. Okay, I have here is the title, Jefferson's America, governed by the states, not the national government. Thomas Jefferson doesn't think the federal government should do much. And so he's going to go about trying to whittle down the power of the federal government by granting more and more power to the states. He literally is going to remove responsibilities that the federal government has and sort of pass them out to the states. Why would he do that? Well, Jefferson thinks that the states have a better chance of doing it well. He particularly doesn't think the president should be doing a great deal. Jefferson thinks that the office of the president should be quite silent. It's funny, you look at Jefferson's presidential papers, they're pretty thin. For a guy who's president for 8 years, Jefferson doesn't want to do much. It's not that he's lazy, it's that he's worried about the centralization of power. Look at the way he responded to the Alien and Sedition Acts. It makes sense. Jefferson doesn't want centralized government to take place. And so one of the ways he's going to contribute to that is he's going to limit the power of the federal government. How do you do that? Well, you cut the number of federal employees, as it says here. You also lower taxes. Because in essence, if a government doesn't tax, it doesn't make money. And if it doesn't make money, then it can't do anything. It has to slow down what it's doing in order to become smaller. And Jefferson wants that. He's going to cut back on the size of the army. He's going to upset Alexander Hamilton by reducing the size of the national debt with a plan, hopefully, to pay off the debt. And as an overall model, Jefferson and then his disciples will continue to do this. When I say his disciples, Jefferson's president for 8 years. And then Jefferson's main number one, Madison, is president for 8 years. And then after that, you have the presidency of James Monroe for another 8 years. Okay, that's 24 years of presidents who all are part of the Democratic Republican Party and who all are Jeffersonian Virginians. So you get this 24-year stretch, right? Virginia really does have it good in the early days of the governing, and Jefferson and his guys are going to shape the way the American government works based on their principles and their logic. It's a rejection of Adams and his high-handed big government activity in order to try and make for smaller national government, bigger state governments. Okay. One of the other things that Jefferson's going to also do is encourage the lowering of the price of land, right? As I look back at one of my maps, pick whichever one you want, the 1796 or the 1800. And later on we have, if you really want to see a slam dunker, go up to slide 6, the 1804 election, where Jefferson absolutely destroys the Federalist Thomas Pinckney. And again, there's a new state here. I see the state of Ohio, and it's green. It's Jefferson's color. The new states, as they go west, are going to be states that are Jeffersonian. Now, if I'm a Federalist, I'm pointing the finger. And I'm saying to Thomas Jefferson, the only reason you're lowering land prices and encouraging settlement in the West is in order to gain voters. You know that those people will move out to the West and they will appreciate that you lowered land prices, and they'll be able to move into that land and they will be like, thank you, Thomas Jefferson, here's our vote. Now, whether or not that's the true motive of things, you can never really know. It's certainly part of the story, but Jefferson also believes in the American farmer. He believes in this ideal of individuals owning land, people who worked that land and then knew what they were up to, and they voted locally and they controlled their lives, right? That to Thomas Jefferson was the most sacred thing. And he was a man who had lived through the Revolution and had seen what big government, in the sense of the English monarchy, could do to the liberties of people. And he didn't want it happening in America. And so one of the ways he's going to try and further the cause of the liberty of mankind is to push the American settlement to the West. And if you look at us here in 1804, we've added 3 new states since the early days: Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and they're growing. Right? Look at Kentucky there with 8 electoral votes. That's bigger than New Hampshire and Vermont and Rhode Island, and it's the same size as New Jersey. These western states, they're going to start being big electoral college powers. It's one of the reasons the Federalist Party is going to get run out of here. Another reason is you're looking down at the Federalist nominee going, who is Pinckney? Okay, Thomas Pinckney is a player in the American Revolution, but let's be fair, he's not on the all-star team. He's not first-string lineup. He's not Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Hamilton, Burr. He's that guy when you look down the roster and you go, huh, he plays for them. I didn't know. He's that guy. Okay. All right, now where are we? Let me get myself together here. I'm going to take a sip of water. Pardon me, folks. If you heard a dog clawing at the door earlier, that's my little dog Tabasco, who was trying to get in. He eventually got in the other door, but man, he was trying to claw in like there was a house on fire. All right, pardon me, you had to live through me drinking some water. I spilled it all over my notes, too. Goodness gracious. This is never going to make national television, that's for sure. All right, moving along. Here we go. The Louisiana Purchase of 1803. We study this for a couple of reasons. One of them is this. If you look at Thomas Jefferson, he follows the model I just spoke about, except in moments when he doesn't, and you go, that doesn't make sense. So Thomas Jefferson's purchase of Louisiana is a big government moment. It is what we call loose constructionism. Loose constructionism means this. There are some people who believe that the Constitution is written, and to the letter you must follow it, and that is all the power that there is there. That's Thomas Jefferson's idea, and it's generally referred to as strict constructionism. In other words, if it isn't in the specific language of the law, you can't do it. In the national bank debate, if we go back to the 1790s, Jefferson had said to Hamilton that what Hamilton wanted to do wasn't specifically in the letter of the law, and therefore it could not be done. Hamilton had countered with the loose constructionist point of view and said this: it's not in the letter of the law, but the necessary and proper clause allows us the opportunity to sort of stretch the powers of the government when necessary. And that makes it okay. So in the 1790s, Jefferson was on the side of we have to stick to the letter of the law. Here he is, as President of the United States, in 1803, buying a territory, Louisiana, more on why we're buying it here in a moment, buying Louisiana because we need a territory and because Jefferson gets this opportunity. Now, Jefferson's critics are going to say, hold on, Thomas. This is not strict constructionism. If I read through the Constitution, nowhere in here does it specifically say that you have the right to purchase that territory, but you did that. And you did it because you thought it was necessary in that moment. So, Thomas Jefferson, you, a strict constructionist, before you became president, have suddenly flip-flopped. And now that you are president and presented with an opportunity, let's be honest, is too good to pass up. It doubles the size of the nation. It's too good. You look at it and you say, I think we might have a little bit of loose construction here, a little bit of wiggle room. That's not okay, Thomas Jefferson. You're switching your political ideals. Okay, so critics of Thomas Jefferson would point to this as a moment of Jefferson not behaving the way Jefferson says that we are supposed to behave as a government. Now, why are we getting this? A little bit of backstory. Napoleon, the leader of France, invades Spain in 1801. And when he does that, he takes from them the territory of Louisiana. So if you remember, the French had left North America after 1763, but they kind of get back in the game in 1801 when Napoleon seizes Spain and says, oh, you have territory in America? I have territory in America. And the French think, maybe we'll get back in there. Maybe we'll build this empire in the Americas. And America, the United States of America, does not want that, right? If you look at this map here, the Louisiana Purchase, it's the area in dark green, would contain America in the sense that it would give us a western boundary. And Jefferson, always looking for expansion, always looking for room for the American farmer, would say, oh, we don't want that at all. We want room to move as far west as we can. So here's what we need to do. We need to buy that territory. And Jefferson sends James Madison over to France with instructions. And he says to him, all right, here you go. I will offer $10 million for the city of New Orleans and the right to sail the Mississippi River. So Madison's initial pitch to Napoleon is, listen, we want to be able to use that river for trade purposes. We'd kind of like the other side too. But for $10 million, sell us the city of New Orleans at the mouth of the Mississippi River and sell us the right to navigate the river. Napoleon, in the meantime, loses a huge portion of his territory to a slave insurrection in Haiti. And when that happens, Napoleon realizes this dream of an American empire, it's never going to happen. So as a result of it, he withdraws his plans for America, looks at Madison and says, hey, you guys are in the market for some territory? I'll sell you the whole thing. And we buy it. And as I said, it might be a moment of compromise politically for Thomas Jefferson, but man, it's considered to be an important moment of American expansion. Because I look at this map here, and if you have it next to you, look over here like I'm looking too. America is, by this point, about 2/3 of the way across the continent, at least on paper. And what's on the other side of us? The golden area is Spain. It's soon to be an independent Mexico when they win their independence in about a dozen years. And that lighter green territory that we call the Oregon country up there, that's kind of jointly controlled by a bunch of people who say it's theirs, and they have people there, but not very many people there. The United States does, Britain, Russia might seem like an odd one, but Russia owns Alaska at this point, keep in mind. So there's Russians in that area who think maybe this is ours. And if you look at that as a whole package, that's very unsettled. Why am I telling you this? Because when America looks at this map, we think, we're going to get the whole thing. We may not get it right now. It might take a little bit of time, but there is no European power now strong enough to stop us. Spain doesn't have that strength anymore. Britain is going to be up in Canada, but pushed out of the way here in a moment, and France is off the table. This is going to be ours, and Jefferson knows it. And Jefferson looks at that, he buys Louisiana, and in a sense assures America a really good chance, if not a guaranteed chance, of pushing all the way across that continent. And suddenly it's all ours. So it's a very important moment for Jefferson. On to the sixth slide, we can see Jefferson triumphantly winning in 1804. The Federalist Party is on the decline. Okay, you're going to see it change briefly here on the next slide. I'm going to go down to slide number 7. Okay, this one's entitled Ongoing British Threats to America. Here's what's going on. The British never really left America alone, in the sense that when the Revolutionary War ended, the British withdrew their forces from America and were supposed to do so on a permanent basis. Did they? Not really. You got to keep in mind, they're still our neighbors. They're our upstairs neighbors. They live in Canada. And they're still influential with the Native Americans who live on the western portion of the American frontier. So to explain to you how that matters, 2 things. Number 1, the British are impressing or stealing American ships and sailors on the high seas throughout the early 1800s. For the British, that's a question of foreign policy. They want to fight France, and they think that the way that they can easily weaken France is by ending shipments of American goods to France, which we are doing. We're trying to trade, right? We're a new nation trying to build ourselves up. And so the British are, in essence, trying to slow the trade of American goods into France. In the meantime, though, we're stuck in the middle of that. French sailors are also stealing our vessels that are bound for England. And America is this rather pipsqueak-sized naval force by comparison that's trapped in the middle. So we asked the British to knock it off, and the British have been absolutely unresponsive as far as knocking it off. They continue to steal American ships and sailors. I note here that 8,000 American sailors are stolen in the span of 1 decade. And how do you impress these sailors? If you're wondering about the mechanics of it, you take a series of ships, you mob a ship, an American, generally merchant ship, You then steal the guys off of it. You chain them into place in working on the ship, and that's the end of it. There used to be this term "shanghaied," where people would be, stolen from land, put onto a ship, and forced into service on the ship, where they'd have really no way to escape. That's really what this is, but it's being done in a pirate way by foreign governments. Now, let's add to that. The British are also messing with America on the western portion of the country. How are they doing that? They're doing it by helping Native Americans fight against the American expansion into the West. So the British aren't using their soldiers, but they're funneling money and guns down into the portions of America where we're expanding. I'm going to flip the camera again if I can. Here we go. See this map of America? Okay, so here's the American territories we're in. Here's where we're trying to expand, out into here. And that's where the English are sending money and guns to try and slow the movement of American settlers to the west. So when we talk about a group called the Warhawks are congressmen who represent this western and southern portion of America for whom expansion is the big issue. Okay, let me flip this back. Okay, hopefully that's not making people dizzy. So you have two issues. You have the impressment of American sailors, and then on the other hand, you have the Warhawks issue, which is the attacks on American settlers in the western part of these settlements. What to do about it? Well, some people want war. For instance, if you'll grab your Voices of Freedom, Felix Grundy, Cry of the Warhawks. Okay? Grundy writes, and I don't want to read to you like it's a bedtime story because this would not be a great bedtime story, but Grundy writes about the need for Americans to go and conquer territory. Okay, he says, this is a speech that Grundy's giving in 1811, "It cannot be believed by any man who will reflect that the savage tribes," there he means the natives, "uninfluenced by other powers would think of making war on the United States." So what he's saying is, let's be logical. Would these native tribes pick a fight with us on their own? No, they would not. This is Britain putting them up to it. Okay? They understand too well their own weakness and our strength. They have already felt the weight of our arms. They know they hold the very soil on which they live as tenants at sufferance. How then are we to account for their late conduct? Grundy probably allowing for a pause. Britain. Great Britain alone has intercourse with these northern tribes. I therefore infer that if British gold has not been employed, their baubles and trinkets and the promise of support and a place of refuge, if necessary, have had their effect. These natives have been bribed. That's what he's saying. They've been bribed by the British to pester Americans, and we need to whack away at the British in order to stop it. Okay? He talks about a war, and he really has big, broad ambitions. I'm skipping down here a little bit, but he wants to take on the Canadian portion of the British Empire. He wants to go to war in order to take Florida in the south. Grundy wants a massive war, not just against the British, but against the Spanish who own the territory in Florida for the expansion of America. Let's take these people out of here once and for all. Let's make a big America. Okay, now, there are some people who like that idea. There are others who do not like that idea. More on that in a moment. From the native perspective, the document that comes before it is from Tecumseh. Right? Tecumseh is a Shawnee leader who's going to unite the natives in an effort to try and slow the advancement of Americans. Okay, and in the document here, he talks about the need for the unity of Native American cultures. It should remind us of the document we saw from Pontiac. If you remember, Pontiac in 1763 leads a rebellion against the British expanding into the West, and he unites different Native American tribes in a moment of kind of pan-Indian unity, and that's what's happening here too. Tecumseh is gathering together Native American forces saying, we need to stop this expansion. We need to make sure that the white man is turned away. I'll leave the details of the reading to you there. Okay. You're Thomas Jefferson. You know of all of these problems. Impressment, it's a problem. Okay, Native American attacks on the Western, not hemisphere, I almost said, sorry, the Western territories, that's a problem. How do you deal with the problem? I love this because this is very Jeffersonian. Jefferson's answer, as you can see on the slide here, is a federal law called the Embargo Act of 1807, which makes it illegal for American boats to leave ports, and therefore they can't get harassed. That is brilliant. How do you assure That the bully at school doesn't take your lunch money? You don't go to school. There you go. Winning, all day long winning. Okay, now Jefferson's move is going to be horrendous for American shipping, right? Jefferson makes it illegal to trade. The business is going to collapse, and it does. Okay, America does roughly 1/10 of the business in the next year that it had done in the year before. Now, I mention it because politically speaking, it matters who we're talking about. The people who do the trading on the seas are really the New England Federalists. These are the people in America who think we need trade. Jefferson's law, they think, particularly focuses on them. So let's take this out for a walk for a moment. Jefferson gets a law passed, legally, that says that the government is going to enforce a ban on trade across the ocean. That's probably good because it'll lead to less impressments. But by the same token, if I'm a New England Federalist, I'm going to say to President Jefferson, you're killing me. You're using the power of the federal government in order to force me out of business. You're taking away my livelihood. You say, Thomas Jefferson, continue on, I'm still a Federalist, by the way, keep that in mind. You say that this is small government that you like. It doesn't feel that way, Thomas Jefferson. It doesn't. It feels like big government. It feels like the federal government saying to me, you can't sail your ships, you can't make a living, we'll tell you how to make money. And as a result of it, I don't think you're a small government guy, Thomas Jefferson. Now, Jefferson would respond and say, hold on, New England Federalist. I prevented a war. I stopped a war because if we have a war, I'm going to have to tax you. I'm going to have to raise an army. That's going to be big government. So in essence, the Embargo Act is a movement of small government. Right? What I want you to be able to do is debate both of those sides there, right? That's the key, is that you can look at the New England Federalist and say, I see your point, that's not right. And then you can look at Thomas Jefferson and say, I see your point too, President Jefferson. We should be able to take both sides of that point of view and represent them, okay? Now, Jefferson eventually gets that law revoked, but for Jefferson, he's out of here. If you look at the 1808 map, it's the 8th slide, the Federalist Party makes a little bit of a comeback. They don't necessarily do all that well. They're not going to win. But by the same token, Jefferson has taken a little bit of a hit, and now he's gone. If I'm Thomas Jefferson, I am happy to be out of the job because there is probably a conflict coming. And Jefferson is going to hand off the issue of this conflict with Britain and perhaps the war, and what we'll call the War of 1812 when it arrives. That's somebody else's issue. I am done. I'm going to head back to my estate. I'm going to do my reading and my farming, and I am going to leave the problem to somebody else. And Jefferson happily walks away from that and gives the problem to James Madison. Okay. And that wraps us as far as the material goes. The video is looking like it's 40-some minutes long. I hope you don't think you're not getting enough education. Part of me thinks that's a worry here, that people are going to be like, wait a moment, it's supposed to be longer as far as time goes. I hope that's not something we're thinking. If it is, and I can do something, I hope you'll let me know. Otherwise, on your assignment that you do on March 23rd, please make sure you include that 4th question. I want to know how this format's working for you so that I can get some feedback as to whether or not doing things this way is going to happen. If you have no idea what's going on around you, the high school districts have all let school out, so I'm basically at home during the day. Doing this would be no harm at all, but if there's another format you'd prefer me to pursue, I'm happy to do it. I will end the video with the agenda, which also has my contact information on it right there, so please take note of that, okay? I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you continue to be well. Take care of yourselves. Contact me if you need anything. I miss you.